Welcome to The Pillars, the podcast of the 363rd ISR Wing of the United States Air Force. I'm Chaplain Jim Bridgham.
And I'm Dr. Jerry Walker.
And on this episode, we also have...
I'm Techno Sergeant Johanna Ackerberg.
And Staff Sergeant Denisha Jenkins.
On each episode, we find a brief resilience topic so you can practically fix any potential roadblock you encounter and finish a better wingman, airman, and leader. So let's dive in. What's today's topic?
Well, today we're going to talk about the 5 love languages. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably already familiar with that concept. It's out of a book written by Gary Chapman many years ago that details how we can express and receive love, not just really from our significant others, but really with anybody with whom we interact in our lives.
Okay, and what are the 5 love languages?
Well, there's 5 of them. So the first one would be words of affirmation, then quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch.
And 5's a good number today because this is like our 5th take on starting this podcast. So it's really good. This has been super fun. So as we look at these, what would be an example of words of affirmation?
So words of affirmation are probably like you look beautiful today, or you're doing a great job, just encouraging words, compliments, things like that.
You know, the purpose, I think, is to express to the other person appreciation, or at least that you recognize or notice these positive qualities that they have. And all of us have these certain character traits that we hold near and dear to our hearts. Maybe we identify as being a loving and caring husband or wife, or mother, father, or a really hard worker. And we want people to not just see those traits, but to let us know that they see them. And so that's where words of affirmation comes in. I think it's letting the other person know that, hey, I see you, how good you are, and I want to tell you that.
And when you're giving the feedback, you're avoiding extra criticism. So you're saying, hey, great job. You're a great psychologist, and not saying, wow, you did a terrible job today. And it's so different from feedback, though. It's different from constructive feedback. It's just saying that you really care for them for the good they did versus using it as almost maybe a sandwich technique we've heard before with the good,
right,
bad,
the feedback
good.
Sandwich, also called the crud sandwich, right?
Yes.
You're right. This is completely different. And what I love best about words of affirmation is that it can be completely spontaneous. You can just go up to somebody, especially somebody who's maybe having a down day, and let them know what you appreciate about them. It's as simple as that. And you'd be surprised at how people respond when you tell them these things just out of the blue.
Well, I remember quite a while ago, I walked into a chief's office, and I walked in, and I just said, hey, you're doing a really good job. And they were doing a great job. They'd helped an airman out, kind of a really important situation. And the person looked at me, and this person, first of all, had a look of like, well, who is this guy? And, chaplains, we do this anyway. He has me close the door, and he said, no one has ever told me that.
Wow.
And I remember looking around and thinking, like, no one's told this person. He was really emotional about it. So we forget that no matter who they are, just to tell them they're doing a good job on something, no matter how menial, it really does help us to serve in a better way, to go further than we think we can.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that necessarily can't do harm. It's one of these love languages that I think most people would like to receive, but certainly not everybody. And that's something I think it's important to point out too, is that not everybody has all 5 of these love languages. I mean, they may to a lesser or greater degree, but some of them are going to be more important to them than others. So you could be giving those words of affirmation to somebody, but that's not their primary love language.
And before we move on to the next one, something I'd like to point out is you can do this also by writing a little note of thanks.
Okay.
Sometimes that can be the gifts piece as well, because it's minor. But I know some of my supervisors early in my career had written a note like, hey, Jim, great job on this project. You did an exceptional thing. And they wrote them on these little cards that probably cost them 50 cents with a seal on the front. I still have them. I keep them all. And it's not an I love me thing. It's just it meant so much to me to receive that little card. And it probably took them 5 minutes to put together total and deliver it to the desk, but it made a huge impact.
Yeah, the impact was disproportionately greater than the amount of effort expended, but it goes back to what was behind it, the sentiment. That's what was really important.
And even now I'll write a note to like my wife in the morning, and we'll leave notes for each other, and that makes a huge impact, and she does the same.
Yeah, my wife does that too every now and then. When she likes me, she'll leave little sweet little notes for me to find, like inside the medicine cabinet, or maybe one day she'll pack a lunch for me and slip a sweet note in there. It's always fun to find.
Yep.
I always find that the best key is to be sincere, not sarcastic. Because sometimes people can try to do words of affirmation, and it can come across very sarcastic.
Yes.
Or you receive it sarcastic, but it was meant heartfelt.
I agree.
And so a lot of times I have that issue. I will say things, but I have a sarcastic nature, and so people are like, "Oh, whatever," and I'm like, "No, I'm sorry. You did a really good job. Like, don't look at my face. I'm trying to be serious, you know." But that I wanted to kudos you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Authenticity is definitely key, not just for this one, for all of them. And I think it's good that you point that out, because for those people who really crave those words of affirmation, they're going to be especially sensitive to criticism or to harsh words or negative feedback. So it's important to remember too, if you know they do thrive on those affirming words, that they're also going to take the opposite probably a bit more strongly than other people.
So we've just gone through that words of affirmation section. So let's move on to quality time, our second. So Sergeant Jenkins, what's quality time to you?
It's basically just spending time with each other and, you know, turning cell phones off, like just complete alone time with your significant other or spouse.
Yeah, it's doing things together. And it doesn't really matter so much what it is. It's just the fact that you are dedicating time with, to, and for that other person. And we can, you know, do this with our significant others, like on a one-on-one date where we agree, you know, not to look at our phones, or maybe put our cell phones on silent and just attend to each other. But we can also do this with each other. You know, what I try to do when I'm meeting with somebody is I'll take my cat card out of the computer, close the door, and I'll look them, you know, straight in the eyes to show them I'm giving them my undivided attention. And that way I'm showing them I'm giving you, you know, quality time right now, whatever you need. Let's take care of it. And sometimes people need that, I think.
Well, and kids can demand this. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. I have two small ones that just thrive off of quality time. And with our crazy schedules, how it is, the small amount of time we do have, we really want to make it impact. And so we don't turn on our television during the week at all. There's just no time for it. You know, it's listening to their day, listening to their funny stories, me sharing my stories, and they just love that. And it helps with our bedtime routine because they feel full and love, and then they can go to bed with pretty much peace and quiet, not too much fuss from them because they've gotten what they needed from us.
Well, we do it at dinner table. We have an electronic free zone, and my kids who are 12, 10, and 7, what we do is we do a highs and lows part of the day. So each person who comes to the table and anyone who's been to dinner, we say, what was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day, and what's something you're thankful for? And then they have to ask someone else and listen. So if they're not listening, whether we ask them, like, okay, what did your brother say? What did your sister say? What did your mom say? What did our guests say? And it really does show that we really care and listen. And it also makes you think, like, you know, it's something that you can bring up later with them one-on-one. Say, hey, you said that a bad part of your day was, for my son, water was leaking on his locker at his school, and how it made his stuff wet. I'm like, well, how did that make you feel? And he's like, well, actually, it was really embarrassing. And had the opportunity to chat with him about it. So it does bring that real great, I don't know, it's a valuable conversation, not just a waste of time. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, and there's so many different creative ways that you can find, that quality time with your kids, your significant other, even with, coworkers who really need that feedback or that mentorship. So I'd look out for those little pieces, those little 5 to 10 minute snippets of time that you have, and try to find a way to maximize those. Shoot, even say running errands with your kids.
Yes.
Or I know when I have this rarely happens these days, but when I have a longer free time during my lunch break, I'll call my wife and see if she's free, and maybe we can work out a way to get together and spend some quality time together. So it doesn't have to necessarily be often, but making that attempt and trying to find that quality time, I think, is sometimes almost as important as the actual quality time itself.
And I think it works great in the unit as well, because taking those 5-10 minutes to just ask your airmen, how are you doing today? Or sitting down with them, like, what are you working on? Really allows them to see that, wow, my leadership's there, they care, or at least this person is there and they care. And I've seen that as beneficial as well for quality time.
And the biggest thing, not to interrupt you,
Sure.
but what you said is to be brought home to everyone. And if someone comes to you and talks to you as a supervisor, friend, or colleague, turn around from your computer or pull out your cat card, or don't look at your phone just for a few minutes. We're not talking a 20-minute conversation, but if you give that mindful attention to the person, it may mean the world to them.
Yeah, I definitely think, because it shows that you value their time, and like you're giving them your undivided attention, and a lot of people appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's sort of accomplishing the purpose of the words of affirmation, but just indirectly.
Exactly.
Through the demonstration, through that action. And believe it or not, it's funny we're talking about this, because just this morning, one of my supervisors, one of the wing leaders, I won't mention who, came into my office to talk to me about a sensitive subject, and it was his demonstration of quality time for me. And it meant a lot to me that, he would drop everything, he would come in and just ask me how I was doing, and give me that time. So I think what we're talking about is absolutely right. I mean, if we can demonstrate that towards the people that we work with, how well is that going to be received? I think probably very well.
Yeah. I've always heard about leadership by walking around, but sometimes it's leadership by mindfully walking around. If that makes sense. Okay, so that was quality time. So our third one is receiving gifts.
Yes, and this one is my favorite. So it's not so much about, for me at least, it's not about receiving the gifts. It's also giving. So like I'm a person who loves like giving gifts to people. I like seeing that expression on your face when you're like unwrapping it and stuff like that. But it's also it's giving time and remembering special occasions. So like anniversaries, just small things like me and my husband celebrate our dating anniversary. So when we first started dating and stuff like that. So it's just stuff like that, small tokens and everything.
So I wonder if there's a flexible interpretation of the word gift in this context. What would you think?
For me, even writing down those cards, giving a card to someone, say, hey, thank you for this, or thank you for help, can be a giving of a gift.
Okay.
It can be something really minor.
Right, it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. You don't have to go out to the mall and buy something expensive, right?
No, in fact, one of the things I did was for my wife, we do cards, so I'll write a card to her. I'm not the best at writing, so I'll get a Hallmark card. I'm a Hallmark Platinum member, and I actually have wax seals I got and just purchased them at Jamestown, and I'll burn the wax in and seal it and hand them to her. And that it does not take long to do, but to her, it's that extra special kind of thing. And for her, it means almost as much as the card itself that I would take the time to do that, because it is ornate. It looks really pretty. Again, it only takes a couple minutes to do. Yeah. So that could be an example of a very minor gift to give, but makes a big impact.
I know you and I have talked before about how every now and then we'll just out of the blue buy flowers for our wives and bring them home to them. Every now and then I'll switch it up and buy like my wife's favorite wine, a bottle of wine, and just bring that to her. It's that kind of thing. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It's more the gesture and what that gesture says.
Correct.
And again, bringing it back into the unit, I definitely know that for myself, the best gift I can give the people that work for me is the gift of time. Their time is so valuable, and we take so much of it for the duty day. And so allowing them that opportunity to leave an hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes even early. I'll take the heat from leadership, but I'll stay behind and let them go. That time just means the world to them.
And that comes from recognizing what your folks need and what you can do for them to help them out. And certainly you don't want to set a precedent, right, where it's just something they come to expect, or they believe that, I did X, Y, and Z, so I'm owed this, right?
But what's funny is with kids, as an example of how minor a gift can be, I can order my kids something from Amazon, and it comes in the box, and they will sometimes care more about the box than what came into it, to the point where I say, I just need to start ordering boxes. And to them, that's like a gift, because they turn it into something beautiful, and they play with dolls and all these things, and that's a big thing for them. That could be considered a gift.
Yeah, it's great with kids, and especially young kids. I mean, you can get them tiny little trinkets, these minor little toys, and they love getting things in the mail. So, I mean, maybe even just like take a little G.I. Joe or one of those plastic army men, throw it into a box and mail it to yourself, and you got mail. And,
it's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was our third one. So that was giving and receiving gifts. So our fourth is
acts of service.
And what are those?
So for this one, for me at work, I will try to see if anyone needs help taking out trash, or I'll see someone cleaning the windows and I'll be like, oh, hey, do you need help with that? Stuff like that. Just assisting with anything that somebody has.
Yeah, it's like volunteering in a way, but out of the goodness of your heart, because you recognize that there's something somebody else needs help with, or something that you can do as like part of a civic duty, right? In the larger sense, to help out other people. And what I've come to learn, being a relatively new father, is that this used to not be a big deal in my marital relationship. Now this is a huge deal. In fact, I would say acts of service has become my wife's number one love language, because she needs more out of me now that we've got this young kid crawling around the house. So, certain things like doing the dishes or doing the laundry without being prompted, or offering to take him off her hands for a little bit so she can, go study or relax. That's a huge thing now. Whereas, before, maybe acts of service weren't as impactful. So it's a good thing too to keep a beat on, what your partner needs at that point in time, or what they seem to respond with. And that recognize that changes through the course of our lives. I would say one thing that you want to be very careful with acts of service is that you follow through with your promises, and you make sure that you don't overextend yourself, right? So if you tell somebody who, for them, acts of service is really important, if you tell them you're going to do something,
you need to do it.
You got to do it, because it's going to hurt them a lot more if you fall through on that.
A lot of times with my daughter, I'll say, we'll see, because I don't want to say yes or no until I know what that day actually looks like, especially if it's after a Monday through Friday, because you never know what time going to be available. So that kind of helps to say, we'll see, and then when it's a yes, it's a firm yes when she knows that.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. And last, we have physical touch.
So, obviously, this one's an easy one. So, just hugs, pats on the back, stuff like that. Just any type of physical touch type thing.
So you guys are okay with hugs now? Is that hugs around the office? Hugs for everybody?
No. Because some people don't
Only
like
some
that.
people.
Some people just need a fist bump.
Yeah.
Well, like an air
Definitely.
high five. I know it's not physical touch,
Mm-hmm.
but that air high five means a lot to me. But that's just because I'm a germaphobe.
Okay.
So it's still a high five. I still receive it the same. I'm just not down with the whole, too much, physical touch.
In the chapel I was in during the H1N1 issue, we normally will pass the peace or shake each other's hands. Well, it turned into the holy fist bump, and then in each of the pews we put hand sanitizer because of it. So some people are risk averse, thinking they're going to get ill or sick, but it means a lot. So in the office, sometimes it's not giving a hug. That's probably not always appropriate, but giving a handshake at least, that level of physical touch, that fist bump. At home though, with kids, I recommend as much as you can hug them.
Yes.
Important. So every day, first thing in the morning, I get up and my son's usually already playing Destiny because I'm the parent of the year. But I come downstairs and I'll give him a hug because he leaves for school a little bit after. Same thing with my daughters, and just say, "Till I love you," give him a hug, and it means a lot.
That's absolutely right. And developmentally, touch is crucial for our development, not just our social development, but our biological development as well. There's something called contact comfort, where kids from a very early age actually need skin-to-skin contact with their caregivers in order to help bond and help soothe them, calm them down. And even as they grow older, there's something just comforting about being able to physically touch their mom and dad, or whoever their caregivers are. So you guys have probably seen kids out in the wild, right? They'll run around and everything, and then all of a sudden they'll run back to mom or dad and just cling to their leg. It's something about that touch that makes them feel safe and secure. And even as we grow older, we don't necessarily grow out of this. In fact, I would argue that a lot of us still have this latent need for physical touch with other people. Now, I'm not going to go endorse touch therapy or anything like that. I believe that just you can heal people by laying hands on them, not in a spiritual sense, but just everybody gather around and touch this person, and all of a sudden they're going to be free of cancer. I don't think it works that way, but there have been studies that indicate it can help with depression, with sense of loneliness,
even trauma recovery,
and isolation. So there is something to it. I would say we maybe don't fully understand what that is neurobiologically, or at least I don't know enough about it. But I think it is important. We just have to figure out how to do that appropriately and in the right context and for the right people. So, if in doubt, you can always offer people the option, right? I had a supervisor who told me that whenever he concluded a session with his patients, he'd ask them hug, handshake, or high five. So let's put the ball in their court to let them know, here's how I want to be touched, which I think is a good cue to go off
I
of.
think that's really great.
I think it's also important to know that how the other person receives, because I've worked with a lot of very touchy-feely people, and even though it's uncomfortable for me, if that's what they need at that moment, I am willing to give that hug. I may not receive it like they receive it, but I will be there to just make sure, like, if they're getting bad news or if they're just having a rough day, sometimes that's what they need, and so therefore it's not about me, it's about how can I make this person feel what they need to feel at that moment.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay. So our 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch.
So I would like to ask the two of you, what would you consider both the top 2 of your love, like your love languages? What are your top 2?
For sure, words of affirmation for me is number 1.
For you, yeah.
And then the second one is going to be quality time. And I think spending that time with folks, and that's really annoying because it takes so much time. It really does. And for me, I love to talk and hang out with folks, so that I have to be aware of and self-aware enough to know that, well, I can't spend quality time with every single person or all of my kids every day. Like a lot of quality time. I can spend that limited time and make it as good as possible.
Yeah.
But I can't spend 4 hours every day with my kids. I wish I could. I can't. So
Same here.
What's yours?
I'm right there with quality time too, and actually physical touch. I'm a hugger through and through. So I know that makes some people uncomfortable, but that's just just a light touch or a pat on the back. That makes me feel good, and a lot of times makes me feel even better than if somebody had just said, "You're doing a great job." Well, I think I still like that. I don't know. Part of me still, I guess, gets kind of embarrassed and. Because it doesn't do it for me as much as a good high five or something enthusiastic like that. So that's what I have to say mine are. But one of the ways you can...
I was going to say, that's funny that you say that, because in my house, that's my husband. He's the touch and time, so he calls it T squared. So anytime he's not getting what he needs, he's like, T squared. And I'm like, all right, what can I do for you? What do you need? And so that way we're in tune.
That's a great point, because if you can talk to your significant other about these things and you guys start to figure out what you need from each other, I mean, how much better you're going to be able to communicate those needs.
Definitely.
I can't tell you how many times I'll work with a couple where one of them was trying to do some of these things, what they thought their partner needed, and it turned out they needed something completely different. Their heart was in the right place, but they're expressing that love in the wrong way, or the way that they're not the way that their partner needed. So I think these 5 love languages are a great tool to use just as a communication, a common language to have with your partner, and to you get the sense of how do I best express love from to them, and how do I receive love. Sometimes they're the same. Sometimes people will give love using one of these love languages and the way they want to receive it. If I'm giving out a lot of hugs, you probably think that, yeah, this guy likes to be hugged, right? But that's not always the case, so it's good to talk about it too.
Which I think is so interesting that you can be so complex. We do list out these 5 love languages, and we're like, well, here, it's easy. Go figure out your significant other, right? But that's not always the case, because they send and receive love differently or the same than you send and receive love. And so you may give high fives as physical touch, but you may only want acts of service, something simple like that. But it's just trying to figure out what...
And they do shift.
Yes.
So throughout life, you have to constantly be aware and asking what works. Because if not, you're sending one and they're not hearing it at all. Well, thank you for listening to The Pillars, the podcast of the 363rd ISR Wing of the United States Air Force. I'm Chaplain Jim Bridgham.
And I'm Dr. Jerry Walker.
I'm Technical Sergeant Johanna Ackerberg.
And I'm Staff Sergeant Denisha Jenkins.
Until next time, if you need us, please reach out to us on the global address list. Finally, we want to thank you for what you do for our nation and what you do for our wing. We hope you have a wonderful Air Force Day. Bye.
Bye.